Me is it me? Ah, see what I did there? All right, welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mackie.
That's really weird. My Skype's playing up. Anywho, can you still hear me, Mackie? Yes or no?
I can hear you, my
Yeah,
friend.
good. Perfect. All right, we're broadcasting live from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, where it's more than just radio. So jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 407.
7 and 400 doesn't sound very good. We wait till the team. Sounds much better.
I had my hands in the air like, can I get a witness? Okay, so it's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home. Thanks, SJ. On a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you miss Solaris' show, she always has a great show. She always has great guests and have great discussions. It should be called the Great something or other, shouldn't it be? The Great Solaris
The great show. The Great Solaris Show. That's what it
That's
should be
right.
called.
Today she had Renee Colston on discussing music of the plants. Extraordinary.
Ooh.
Yes, it only costs $5 US to jump into the archives to subscribe. I recommend you do, because if you don't know who we're talking about when we mention Solaris, you're missing out. So you don't miss out. Shame on you, as Mackie says. Shame on me. Shame on you.
Shame on you.
For shame. So all you have to do is jump in and subscribe, and away you go. You can get all her shows, and not just her shows or our shows, but all of the hosts' shows are available there in the archives. Mackie and I, we acknowledge the custodians of the land. Now, where I was last week, it wasn't the Darkinjung people, it was the Bundjalung people.
Ah, okay.
And I apologise for not recognising their area, I suppose, best way to put it. But that it spreads all the way down to maybe like Taree. It's huge. So, but that isn't the case where I am today. I'm back home again. It's the Darkinjung people, or Darkinjung.
And the rock people for me.
And while we tend to jest a lot on this show, we do not jest about this. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And we thank them for the use of their land. And it's just the way it should be. Becky, the use of their land. Oh boy, that's a thin line, isn't it? Use.
Well, use, misuse, abuse.
There
right?
you go.
It's
I
all
love
kinds
that.
of
That was
uses.
very poetic for a Sunday.
Wasn't it though? What a wordsmith I am.
I can hear that we're both kind of relaxed. We've been through the horrors of Christmas. We've clearly recognised a new revolution of the sun. Orbit of Earth around the sun. There you go. That's a bit better. And recognise that we're yet another year older. And so we're in the Christmas holiday period still, right? Some of us don't go back to work for another week. Some go back tomorrow. I'm in that group. And having driven down from 798 kilometres yesterday, when the temperatures in Australia were the hottest on the planet, the top 10 cities of the world, the top 10 hottest temperatures in the previous 24 hours were all Australian cities.
Australia, mate.
Australia. You know, Australians probably swear a little bit more than we do on air. We're filtered, so we can't do that kind of thing.
Oh, massively more. You're funny. A little bit more, yeah.
Just a little.
It's like saying, no, I don't even know what that's like saying, man. I don't want to say anything about the Catholic Church because then people hate me even more. It's like, what?
Oh, the hate mail we get. Oh, boy. So just saying, my my car has a temperature sensor on the intake of the engine, so I get to see what the external temperature is. And the hottest it got to yesterday was 45 while I was driving. I rang home to see what it was like on the way home to find out what my ETA was going to be like. You know when I do this with the kids sometimes. We're in the car and say we'll be cruising at an altitude of 0 meters. Traveling at this speed, heading in this direction, and the temperature at the destination is going to be, like Mickey, when you've got a flight somewhere, and the captain reads through the intro. It's very nice. I like it. So I rang Belinda to get what the temp was. She goes, "It's 46 on the deck." Oh no!
Too hot. Stay where you are.
Yeah. That's what she kept saying. She goes, "Stay up there. If it's 30 degrees up there, stay up there because it was an onshore breeze. So the ocean is sending us in air temps of 30 degrees, and within a K or two from the ocean, it's 45 degrees. It's crazy, right?" Anyway, so it was a fun drive, and the car's air conditioned. It doesn't sort of, maybe the performance of the vehicle is subdued somewhat through the heat. So, but other than that, it was pretty effortless. Yeah, but oh my goodness, the devastation this week has been. Oh, it's hard to fathom, to be honest. Meki, I wrote a piece and put it on Facebook this week, and if you're one of my friends on Facebook, you'd know what I'm talking about. And at the time, this was 3 days ago, there was 64,000 square kilometers, which is 12.9 million acres burnt. Something like 1,500 homes, but now I know it's gone up. And what's that? You give me the number of animals dead.
It's about 500 million. That's an estimate. Of course, we can't be too sure, but yeah, that's well beyond any genocide that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, completely. It is, I think, second to a meteor impact.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a lot of species here, at least that's what they're saying now, it's an extinction level event. Mm-hmm. I had a friend comment on a couple of the things I posted on Facebook, and he says, look, the bush will recover, and I agree. I mean, the Australian bush relies on fire to propagate and spread seeds, germinate, all that wonderful stuff. So the plant life is going to be okay, because Australian natives, they're used to it. But this level of devastation in the fauna, the wildlife, is literally unprecedented. And it's a good question as to whether or not it's possible for the wildlife to recover. It's an event that some might point to and say, yeah, look, someone did this because now we can develop all this land because there's nothing alive there anyway. So let's just develop it. Why not? It's very cynical.
It seems like there very well might be an argument in that direction in next year. Meki, so the government was wanting to privatize the management of these forests,
the national forest.
Yeah, which are, to be honest, the things that are on fire. So, okay, well, clearly the government is incapable of doing even the simplest task with just a handful of people. And, that's all that was really required. So they deleted the budget. Don't need the budget for that management thing. Oh, surely we can cut 75% from it, can't we? Mickey, yes. Yes, we can.
I say we do 85%. We offshore the rest.
So that's what it's going to be in the future, right? We're making this up, this part. So you say, look, I want to do some back burning, and you wait 45 seconds for the phone to finish ringing, and you get through to a foreign country help desk, and they take note of your request, and then the ticket is closed without any action. Like, I'm really struggling to see how any of this it makes any sense to anyone. But yes, it's the greatest fire catastrophe not in one area, but across the entire country. So from Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania, all of those states have wildfires currently. We call them bushfires. Bushfires, and even Kangaroo Island, they say they're going to lose the entire population of kangaroos. This is today. So yesterday it was, don't worry about it. We'll have 15,000 people here, just, tourists arriving tomorrow by ship. Don't worry about it. You can still come to it. And then today was, I really don't think anyone should be coming here.
Yeah, no, look, and a lot of people got it wrong as well when it came to the evacuation of those tourists. There were 4,000 tourists, or 4,000 people, not just tourists, 4,000 people on the beach, and 800 were evacuated. So the 800 number was not the totality, but rather 1/5 of the number of people stranded. The others are still there, and this is I've been in Australia 30 years. And I've spoken to people that were born here and have lived here all their lives, and no one has ever heard of anything like it. Like thousands of people running away from a fire to a beach, which is sensible, of course.
Yep.
And then they're stuck. They're stuck, and they have to be evacuated by Navy ships. That doesn't happen. It happens now. Something else occurred to me, Dave.
What's that?
When I looked at the fires, I came close to a couple and closer look. And then inevitably, I got the warning message from, warning SMS from the government myself. Nothing, to worry about. I mean, it was a small, 20 hectare, I guess. It's a small, in comparison, fire near my house, which was brought under control fairly swiftly. But I realized something at that point, and not just because it affected me, but I had looked at the fires before. I had looked at how long we've been fighting these fires, how fatigued the firefighters are, in the news reports that I saw. And just as I was watching, and I shared this on Facebook, as I was watching the 9/11 broadcast it happened live, I knew deep in my gut that we're now at a nexus, meaning we have a distinct before and after, and never shall we go back to the before.
Like 9/11. When we were watching that was a before and after event. That was the middle. That event signified the change.
Correct. And the fires, and this is not a single event here. I mean, this is a continuation of fires since September now. It'll going well into March, I should suspect. So 6 months of fires. These fires will shape Australia's identity. It'll shape Australia's approach, hopefully, to how we do things. But there was a before event. Right, so we lived a certain way, and this was all fine. But then the fires happened. These summer 2019 fires, and then in the new world, it's the afterworld. It'll be a different world. It'll be a world that is no longer as innocent as it was once. And we now have to look. I don't have the answer. I don't have the panacea here, but I do know that we need to do something. We have to adapt better. We have to prepare better. I'd never thought I have to make a fire plan. I'm in the middle of the greater Sydney metropolitan area. I'm right smack bang in the middle. If you look at a map, there's a big body of water called Prospect Reservoir, and that's exactly where I live, right? Smack bang. 30 kilometers to the city, roughly, and about 25, 30 to the Blue Mountains, thereabouts, right? And there's a fire here now in the greater metropolitan Sydney area. In fact, right now there's about 7 or 8 fires in the greater metropolitan area. There was a fire in Randwick, Dave.
Yeah.
There was a fire out of control, grass fire in Randwick. Randwick is a stone's throw to the CBD, Sydney CBD. So it is a different world that we have entered now, and we must be prepared better, because if we are as unprepared as we were this year, next year, and the same thing or worse happens, there's no way the sitting government would survive. Not a hope in hell that they would survive. So someone better get us prepared, and I'll do whatever's required. I can't make the plans. I don't have all the funds. I don't have all the logistics. I don't have all the information. But I know, Dave, that we must be better prepared. Dave here, of course, being in the middle of the bush, well, thereabouts, has fire plans, has gear plans. That's all goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got everything.
But now everybody in Australia, everybody needs to have those plans. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you're in Neutral Bay, which is right by the water. I don't care if you're in Mossman. I don't care if you're in Katoomba, certainly that's the fire's burning there now. It doesn't matter where you are in Australia now. It could be Darwin even. You have to prepare for the worst.
I reckon you'll have to submit it to your insurance company or to the government. There'll have to be something that you need to download and complete, because the Victorian state government said that on their website is a form to download to be able to fill in the gaps. They've helped you so well to enable you to get to that point. Meckie's he's right here. Look, the sitting government, the leader went on holidays when it began, came back. Oh, what do you mean it's still going on? Yeah, it's still going on, sir. Right. Well, how's it going? Well, it's pretty bad. Well, what do you mean bad? Well, I mean really, really bad. Is it under control? Nope. What do you think the states are going to do about it? Don't know. Not sure. Yeah. So the conversation ran dry. They didn't know what to do with themselves. And I think now, because they missed the control of the conversation, the absence of talk filled the room with our talk. And all the things that I mentioned about we should have an established federal emergency management agency. We should have a FEMA for ourselves. We should have resources ready to go.
Yeah.
We should have portable cell phone towers, portable, charging stations. This is how people live with, how far apart are we? It was 60 Ks, 65 Ks. So how do people live today? Well, they need power and to be able to receive information. So all our cell phones, they need power. We need to be able to communicate with those devices, because it's the only way you can communicate these days. Landlines usually down, and yeah, they were driven by the exchange, but the first thing, exactly the thing that I predicted would happen, when the fire goes through and they lose power, the cell phones go offline and you're dead in the water. It's just you and nature, whatever's left. So you need your own food, your water, you need a blanket, which can be a towel. You need to have, you need to be able to have your pets. Every person carries their own stuff. You need to get out, right? And this is the thing that's been really hard, I think, for people, is knowing when and realizing that the moment they need to make a decision to leave, it's already too late. And there isn't any other decision points along the way. You just get out. Trees, Meckie, trees have been a big problem. So trees become fragile. And because the ground is so darn dry, it hasn't rained for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
That when the fire comes through, the ground is baked, and any wind will, because now the ground is baked, it becomes brittle, and the trees just fall down, and it will give you really a lot of grief. It'll ruin your evacuation plans. So you sort of need to have a chainsaw and some, snatch cables so you can drag pieces of logs away, cut them out, clear your way and clear your path and get out, because people have died in their vehicles. Meckie, if you remember this week, there was a video from within a fire truck, and the video was looking towards the left of the truck as it drove, not in darkness. This was the darkness caused by the smoke. And all you could see was the fire sort of maybe 40, 50 yards away. And within about the same distance driven, just a couple of seconds, the fire was right up on the truck, and the guy in the back seat was passing the thermal blanket to the guy in front. Well, that guy in front is one of my old neighbours. Tremendous fellow, Jasper. And they're safe. I mean, they held those things up against the glass, and they didn't cook on the inside of the vehicle, because they said it was between 800 to 1500 degrees outside. That's some temperature. And it moves so fast and became like a flame over the truck. And they kept going. But that video went viral. And it's pretty tough. Really, really tough. All the people on the planet who are saying blaming the Greens for blocking, the trail, the trail creation and the fire breaks and all of the burning, the back burning, has been found to be incorrect. So I want to put that out there straight away. So the Greens were never in enough power to make any decisions or shape any decisions, and it just looked like a budgetary thing. They tried to save some money. Thought, who needs those back burning? We haven't had fires forever. And then suddenly, we have our nation, Australia, recorded and broke 3 times the average temperature as the hottest temperature our nation's ever been. Isn't that crazy? 3 times in 4 weeks, in about a month. We broke it 3 times, and it doesn't look like this is going away anytime soon. Hopefully winter will, give us some breathing space before the next onset of fires. But Mackie, when I drove up the coast and I drove, back, and I talked to people, right? I talked to people at the service stations, and they said that even the rainforest at the back of Byron Bay is on fire. The rainforest, right? Now we thought, the rainforest in the Amazon couldn't burn, but surely it burns. The peat is on fire. The peat, it's been so dry, there's no water. Even the peat is on fire.
Because once it's dry, that's a fantastic tinder material. I mean, that burns like nothing else.
Because that's what you shelter your ember in when you're making a fire. You grab some dry peat, and that's perfect for it. Blow the ember a couple of times, and voila, you got a flame, right? Well, unfortunately, it's still burning, and it's pretty bad. I have to say, this is the worst. Out of all the people's memories that I spoke to, none can remember a time like this. They all have their little local story where there was some town fire and it was pretty bad. But you know what the government said this week, Mackie? They said, I think we're going to change, he said, we're going to review. We're going to review building codes.
Let's form a committee.
Yeah. We'll have about 10 committees before we realise what the project name is. All right, and we'll have to form subcommittees. But anyway, what they were talking about was this exactly what I complained about. I said, we need FEMA. We need to have an early, quick, and solid response to all fires. We need tons more assets. We can't survive on, guess who, for the people in the planet that aren't Australians, each one of the states have its own volunteer firefighters, which are just normal people who are trained to fight local fires only. That maybe if the fire went for an afternoon or 2 days or maybe even 3 days, that's the whole design around the RFS. We're not talking, since when was it, August, right? We've had fires and they're still going. Now we're inviting people from all different kinds of countries, like Canada and the US and from New Zealand that I know of. I'm not sure if there's any others. The US even asked us. They said, look, how about you take some of our firefighting aerial assets? And the government said no, for some reason. This was early on. And now it's so out of control that they really wish they'd done it. I think we should have done it because it's their winter. It's not going to burn. We really need to use them. Yeah. Where's international rescue when you need them, right?
That's
right. So the points that I was making in the previous shows about this was, we don't have enough aerial assets. We need so many more of them. Our guys, our own fire chiefs, warned the government, and the government, refused to listen. I think we're going to see some big changes. I think the government will not survive the next election unless it starts to make changes that are visible by the time the next election comes, because I think this is their suicide.
Yeah.
It's appalling. Really, really terrible.
Well, the thing is this, the way everything has been unfolding here, there's just several things that are completely clear. Our policy, if you want to call it that, internally, our domestic policy for Australia is right now it's driven by interest groups. in one of the strongest interest groups. Not the only one, but the strongest seems to be the coal industry.
Oh,
And not
yes.
only not just the domestic coal industry, but rather any coal industry. The Adani mines, which is actually fracking, so it's gas mining, not coal mining. They are getting delivered 750,000 liters of water every day. 750,000 liters of water to a foreign mining concern.
But we don't even have that much water.
Well, we'll find. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We have systematically sold Australia out from under us. The foreign nations surrounding us are getting our resources at a fraction of the cost, including energy and such. In fact, it's to the point where our energy prices are higher than the energy prices of our neighboring countries that buy energy from us.
That's right.
Simply because the one and only Julie, what was her name? Gillard? What was her first name? Whatever her first name was. Julia, there you go. She sold us down the river. And not she wasn't the first one. The coal contracts, there's a whole bunch of stuff that went offshore where we're paying now premium. In fact, sometimes we can't even get certain things because we're selling it off. We've sold stuff overseas, and now there's a shortage in Australia, so we can't. Gas is probably the best example. Gas is being sold at record low prices to our neighboring countries, and we in Australia are paying record prices for the gas that we have left, and sometimes we don't have enough.
It is absolutely true.
It's a horrendous situation. Australia is the most mismanaged country, and I'm a student of history and politics that I've ever seen. It is astounding. It is worse than any third world nation. It is worse than a banana republic.
Correct.
We've thrown away our riches, our natural resources. We let all that money flow out of Australia. The richest people in Australia, the richest corporations, pay exactly, well, either no tax or less tax than me. Less tax than a single income earner. Right? Here. Hello. And these are corporations. It's astounding. It is flabbergasting. And yet there is the super profits. The mining concerns, Rio Tinto, BHP, not only those, they posted super profits. And then there was the super profits tax. Oh, but then we didn't do that anyway because the profits weren't really that super. Our banks are raking in profits in the billions of dollars. Can I say this again? Not revenue or turnover. I'm talking about profit. Billions of dollars. Australia's got 26 million people. How could these four banks generate billions of dollars? By ripping us off. We know they're ripping us off because we had the banking commission. Thank you very much. Right? It's there. We know exactly what happened. There's criminal action against Westpac, CBA, all of those.
The big four.
Millions, Dave. Millions of incidences of illegal actions.
93 million separate incidences, occurrences of money laundering.
That's astounding. The CEO, he was kicked out. Good for him, whatever. But the point is, so what? The CEOs just figured this is a systemic issue that we have here. Am I calling for a revolution? Well, you know what? Nothing else is going to fix it because this is not going to get better. What we have seen, the fires really brought it out, is the complete incompetence and ineffectiveness of the leadership that we have. And I'm not a shock jock. I'm not that, I'm just a citizen, right? I'm just a guy living here, and looking at the world burn around him. This is the worst mismanagement on the planet the last 50 years.
Ever seen, absolutely. Meki, I've got some friends of mine, because of New Zealand's Prime Minister, they've turned everything into, what would Jacinta do? So with the fires, like day 3 of the fires, how are we doing? Not good. Let's solve it. Jacinta would probably have said. She would have launched everything we had at any fires that were current. All right. So the quick action, quick to action, quick to solve, problem solved, which is a timeline, is something that really needs to be addressed. It can't be addressed in normal government speed. The entire country will be at one big cinder before the government can name the project.
No, you're right.
It's just not able, it's not capable of making change so fast. So You're absolutely right. One of the things that I saw, Meki, was the cotton farmers have bought all the water from a river, and there's no more water
Yeah.
in the river past their farm. They just bought it all, and they just had a commission that showed that there was huge gaps. They called it gaps in what was sold and what people took, because there was no metering. And
how much you taking? Everything? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to buy one. Can I buy one water allowance? Fine, that's cool. And then they revisit it, and there's no water anywhere else except there, and they go, but you sold me the water. I got all the water. That's what you're absolutely right. That's what we're doing. The super tax on the mining industry, they decided what they were going to do was just still dig it out of the ground, because they didn't have to pay the tax until they sold it. So they dug it up and waited for the tax to go away, and then they sold it all. And there's a big dip in the cost, or the price of those ores, when they decided to, what's it called when you dump it? I think it's dumping it, isn't it? I think it is, yeah. But when you dump it on the market, and it drops the price. So the first person to dump it on the market was the one who got the most out of it. Look, needless to say, I think we need better management of it. I think we need to have quicker resources delivered to the.
I think we need management. I don't think there's any management.
There isn't any.
Better is a qualifier. Any management at this point would be good.
Yeah. Well, look, they managed to hold the fires off at a 15-kilometer radius from my house, which was really lucky. But it doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that those fires stopped there, and there's still bush to burn. And my prediction is it will burn eventually. There'll be a fire. The rest of all of the state-owned forestry will burn. That's just the end of that. Will those poor towns who lost everything? Like the other thing I saw was a barbecued kangaroo caught up in fencing. Completely barbecued. It was barbecued. I saw a whole town gone, and I've got an app on my phone that allows me to hear all of the the volunteer firefighting services in different regions, and I heard them saying that the whole town was undefendable. The whole town can't even try to defend it. That's when the aerial stuff becomes really important. And there isn't any, because it's all gone south to Victoria. It was something really urgent about trying to save those Victorians, rather than the New South Wales people where I live. There was almost no resources for those poor guys. Then suddenly, even the military is involved in this evacuation of part of those people. And then there's those islands on fire with specific breeds of kangaroos, which are all going to be lost. This is really bad. Really, really bad. The only thing, Meki, that I could say that was of any benefit, I think it's a lesson. I think those people who choose to observe this as an opportunity, take the opportunity, do what you need to do with it. Could you imagine if it was, designing the ultimate house that doesn't burn, there's no ingress, it doesn't matter, fire all you like, and the house will still be there? Could you imagine what the cost to all of the insurances around Australia is going to be as a result of this?
Well, it doesn't really matter, because at this point we have to decide what's more important, right? And look, the answer is, of course, the question is rhetorical. The answer is self-evident. What's more important, lives or money? But the answer, of course, is money for insurance companies. Yes. But the key thing is, if we had building standards that, and look, you're right. I think we need building standards. First of all, let's wind back a couple of steps here. We have huge issues in the building industry in Australia. Massive problems, right? Buildings are being signed off that are collapsing now. Massive apartment buildings that are cracking, and people are being evacuated.
Dodgy steel, dodgy concrete.
Yeah, it's all dodgy. It's incredible. So there we are. We have these fly-by-night building companies that are sort of going bankrupt as soon as they're finished, once they've made their cash, and then they just open up shop as
no one
another
to chase, right? That's right.
No, exactly. So that's huge issue we have in I don't know about the rest of Australia, but certainly in New South Wales. The next problem is, of course, that our building standards, even as they aren't good enough. So we need to build like Japan. Japan faced a similar issue that we face, of course, earthquake related. So Japan, we have to build a certain way now. California is the same way. We have to build a certain way that allows us to survive earthquakes and fires and so forth. So let's change our building codes, and they did, and we have to do the same thing here in Australia. I mean, I drive through the suburbs. I drive through the Blue Mountains, and there are a lot of timber houses, fiber houses. So that's sort of like they're sort of like boards, pressed boards, right?
That's right.
Panel boards, and they go up like tinder.
Yeah.
A very few solid brick or even steel buildings. Dave's house is unique in that he has got a steel a frame.
Yep.
And he's got
made of I-beams.
Yeah, and you've got aerated concrete, bricks, if you will.
Yep, panels or bricks that would have steel reinforcing through them.
Yeah. So there's very little in Dave's house that will burn. I mean, the decking will burn, other things might burn,
the
and so forth. But the house
burn if it is able to, catch the blinds. Yeah. So think about it, Mickey. If it's 1,500 degrees outside the window, it's going to be pretty much 800, 900 degrees inside. So having the building codes, Mickey, wouldn't save was what was, I think, the most apparent thing about these towns, and that they've been there for 100 years.
Yeah, of course. Old houses, yeah.
I know, but then their rebuild is going to be different. I believe, I 100% believe we're going to pay attention. We're not going to build, a wooden structure any longer. I think that's really silly. You're not going to use shingles on the roof. You're not going to build a cedar shack with shingles. You're just not going to. It's got to have to be. There was one guy, Mickey, that I saw in the news, and he had, glass balustrade, nice big 10 mil glass. He had a concrete house. His house with a concrete bunker with a roof on it. That's pretty much how to describe it. And the fires went over his place, and his place is just fine, because he built it in such a fashion as to not allow ingress of the embers, and he had sufficient separation so that even the fire licking it would do nothing. I think that's the kind of building codes we need to establish here.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. This is where we have to go here, and we need a building industry that is no longer as dodgy as it is. I'm not saying all builders are dodgy. That's foolish.
No, that's right.
I'm not suggesting that, but there are a lot of dodgy operators out there, and it's usually the big ones. One of the worst, and I'll name them here. Lend-Lease in Australia, one of the worst operators in Australia. Okay,
I don't want you to repeat the name, but I just couldn't hear what you said then for some reason.
You're funny. They are the worst of the worst. Okay, they really are, and they will get off. I've seen what they've done to the land here and how they get around things. Right, instead of doing the right thing, they find loopholes and gaps to make it 10% of the cost it should be. To make it right. They don't build it right. They don't prepare the land right so you can build the proper property on it. It is astounding, and they get away with it because it is just like a little loophole they're exploiting.
Yeah, the house down in Mascot and that multi-story building in Homebush are two of the biggest, worst buildings for structural integrity that have been made in Australia to date. So, last Christmas wasn't it? Mickey? The families moved in.
Lend-Lease are a bunch of unscrupulous, profit-mongering. I don't even have a word for these people. I mean, there's just no concern for other human beings. It's astounding.
We got really close, Mickey, to our New Orleans down in that town.
Yes, we did.
So close. Just lucky that there was enough time to open up the freeway to get some people out, but because there was no power, so the petrol stations or the gas stations, as you say, couldn't supply people with any fuel,
No.
The bottles of water was $44.
Yeah, no.
You
Right.
saw that, right?
People were waiting for days to get fuel for their cars.
That's right.
Days. Like they literally lined up there, and the exodus was astounding.
But there was people who only had to drive a few kilometers to a fuel station, and they couldn't because they didn't have enough fuel. So this is one of those things, right? So the moment, and I kept saying this to a relative of mine, a close relative, saying 3 meals. You can't deny them 3 meals. As soon as there's an issue, you get in there with food and water, right? I know that we have military, operatable military appliances that you could just get in there with food and water and keep the people happy. Keep them housed and fed, and then supply the fuel and then the radio communications. Get those things in there and keep them alive, because whose hands is it going to be on, right? And
well,
this
see,
is
that's
where
the
the
thing,
federal government put their hands in again, not ours. That's state.
If you look at the politicians, and we had a really great case study of this week. Scott Morrison, our prime minister, he went out to a couple of affected areas, and he was booed.
Oh yeah.
And he was asked questions, and he was not welcomed. Let's just say he had a really bad reception. Now, do I think that he's solely to blame? No, that's foolish. Of course he's not.
Mm-hmm.
But his response to the immense negativity that he experienced was typical of a seasoned politician. You know what it was? It was complete and utter.
Haters gonna hate.
No, he ignored it. He completely ignored it. It's like water off a duck's back. I don't care. Like, he didn't say I don't care, but his body said I don't care. I'm just going to walk away now. I've said what I wanted to say. I had my photo up. Thank you very much. And I don't really care what you say. Because these guys, and this is really where our representative democracy falls down. And I was going to say to you earlier, what we need is a Periclean age, like Athens had 2,500 years ago for Australia. We need to put someone in charge that gets stuff done. Because you're right, the bureaucracy is too slow. Government is too slow. We need to put someone in charge. That's why they declared a state of emergency in New South Wales. So the fire chief essentially can get stuff done, right? So
we had 3 of them so far.
Yeah, Barry Jacklin. Yeah, and this is unprecedented as well, by the way. Right. Barry Jacklin, or whatever his name is, she's the premier for New South Wales, so she's in charge in the state, and she called for a state of emergency, again giving the fire chief the right to do whatever he needs to do to get things done. Now, we need that for Australia. We need someone in charge. And again, this sounds terribly like what Hitler did after the Reichstag, right? The Notstandsgesetze, the emergency laws. But something like that is necessary in order to get things done. It is really no longer any good to rely on the politicians that... See, we didn't even elect these people. These people are part of a party machine. So we've got 2 main parties. We've got the Liberal Party and the Labour Party. Ostensibly, the Labour Party is for the people, and the Liberal Party is for the more affluent business people, right? That's really the divide in people's minds. That's not really true anymore, right? Not really. And there are other little parties that are popping up, but it's really just a 2-party Westminster system. It doesn't work because the people that operate within it are career politicians. They're not even career bureaucrats. They're career politicians. They don't work for a living. They're politic for a living. They have not. They're not in touch with anything that is even remotely real. They don't understand the people they govern. They don't understand the people they're meant to represent. It's astounding. Yeah, it's astounding. What they worry about is squabbling for top job. So how many, Dave, you had the number, how many prime ministers have we had in the last 10, 15 years?
I think it's been 5.
Yeah. We have not a single prime minister has finished their term. Not one. Both parties, by the way. Both parties, not just one party. Now that's astounding. So in Australia, like I said, we're voting for the party, not for the person, and that's one of the problems of that we have, as well. Of course, I'm just amazed by how badly it works. In fact, it doesn't work anymore. Our political system in Australia is completely broken. In fact, most of the systems in Australia that we have, okay, I mean, they're not, look, we still exist, it's all good, but they're broken. And they're broken in such a way that the common people, the regular folks, will never get a leg up, right? But the rich people, they're going to be okay. The rich people are going to be okay. In fact, the entire system is skewed entirely in their favor, right? And I'm not a socialist, I'm not a communist. No. But I believe in the
I'll
fair
tell you
shake
it's
for
not.
everyone. No, I'm far from it. Okay, I'm certainly part of the corporate machine myself, but I still have a soul. Okay, and I still have to be able to look myself in the face in the morning and say, okay, I can go on living. This is astounding. I'm amazed that we've let this happen.
Can I?
And
Can I?
it's
Can I
yeah.
comment
Please go
here?
ahead.
I was listening to, I think, BBC News, and they were doing a couple of live crosses with people around the world in all of the places where the people are revolting against the governments in person. They're protesting en masse. They're not happy with them. There has been, and this is what was stated to this afternoon that I saw, that they're stating that there hasn't been a time in known history where this many countries of the world are in opposition between the people and the leadership. The leadership has failed the people. And this, their comments, that they looked at each other as the person was saying it, and all the people, even those with the live cross, they're not even talking, all just went, that's what we're staring down. And it wasn't until their live cross was sort of not that topic, but it went there, and then suddenly they all had this light bulb moment that this is actually going on. And it's like, wow, yes, it is in all these countries, and where they're saying that the distance between the people is being gapped by the elite to the government, and it's serving the elite more than the people, and this is what revolutions are all about.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Isn't it crazy? I never thought we'd say this, Mickey. I never thought we'd be in this position.
Well, look, it takes triggers. I mean, look, if you woke up in Paris, I don't know, in the morning in the year, I don't know, 17.
Mary Antoinette was in power, yeah.
So, 1788, 1787. If you saw if you saw the American Revolution happen in 76, you thought to yourself, this could never happen in France. This could never happen in France. And a mere 13 years later, it did happen in France. In fact, to much greater extent than it did, I guess, in the Americas. And because what the Americans did not do, of course, was to kill the British monarch.
Topple the crown, that's right.
No, they just kicked them out, which is fair enough. Whereas the French, of course, they went to town on the aristocracy. The nobility was all given a good haircut. But it takes trigger points. And we're reaching critical mass, I hope, in Australia, where we see this doesn't work anymore. It's funny, in life, not just us, but anybody, we all like to just be static. Change is bad. That's my point. We try to be as change resistant as possible. We try to live our lives with as little change as possible, and then we think, it's all good. Well, sometimes change is necessary. Sometimes change is the only thing that is still viable, because we simply cannot go on the way we are. Our systems have failed us. Our systems have completely failed us. They have, okay, and we need to come up with something better. Okay, it'll be painful. If we do, it'll cause some disruption. I'm sure. It won't
be easy.
No, but the point is that and this is not just Australia. I'm talking about this on a global level as well, because the planet is going to hell in a handbasket. It really is. Top, I want to say 25 years ago, I wrote a letter to Nexus magazine, and I said that they actually published it in the letter page, and I said then. That we are passengers on a train that is blissfully racing towards oblivion in the form of an abyss. And we are still racing toward that same oblivion. We're going faster even than we were before. And all these things like, we should, reduce your greenhouse gases, blah, 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 blah. None of this will matter. In fact, none of this matters anymore. We have to make a massive, drastic change immediately. And this will include, and this is again, not a communist over here, not a socialist, the redistribution of wealth. We have to redistribute the wealth of the world. We have to do it. If we don't do it, we're done. I don't care what else you're going to do. If we don't redistribute where the money sits, where the wealth sits, this world is finished. We are done. Because you cannot justify the existence of billionaires on a planet where children starve to death every day, where diseases go unchecked, okay, where simple things can't be helped, where there isn't enough clean water for everybody to go around. How could you justify it? Nobody can work that hard, okay? And I'm not saying every billionaire is a crook, but by jolly, I'm telling you, you're not getting to that lofty heights just through your own genius.
So Meki, this is just paint a picture in your mind of, say, English aristocracy sipping tea while outside they're, going through the mud trying to find something to eat. Right?
Special kind of mud.
That's my bit of mud. That's what we're staring at. We are seeing this chasm between. It's terrible, absolutely terrible, and they can't see it because they're isolated from everybody. They wish to not see it. Did you see that Pink has donated 500 million?
Yeah, and 500,000.
500,000. Sorry, that's better. 500,000, and also what's our best known actress was married to Tom Cruise? Was
Nicole Kidman?
Yes. So she's also given 500,000.
Well, these people can. I mean, give what you can, right?
You will find that tax they had.
Well, the thing is this: those people, and I'm not knocking. I mean, it's great they've given it.
Thank you for helping.
But if you were to give 5,000 or 10,000, it would hurt you a lot more than their 500,000. Right? Just saying.
I know. Look, there's very few people I know, Meki, that don't live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, 100%.
And
so we all do what we can. Exactly. So, but in order to really, these people, how much wealth do you need? How much do you actually? And me in the chat room just said something very interesting. We need to redefine or reprioritize what wealth is, or how we define wealth. And I completely agree. I would love to live in a Star Trek universe, right? Okay. And Wild Bob believes that inbred psychopaths run things. No argument from me. No argument from me. And yes, you're right, me. Music is. So don't go away, guys.
Thank you.
We've been talking over the break.
Yeah, take the break to donate to the station, guys. Take care. See you after it.
And now we're going to get back to your...
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Meki's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. Listener-funded radio. Yes, that means you are funding it if you're listening to this, hopefully. And if you like what you're listening to, you can also subscribe to the archives, as Dave has mentioned at the beginning of the show. Today is show number 477 and 400. We are talking about the hypothesis. We're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff before, but we're now talking about the hypothesis. The hypothesis is really what we're trying to do here in the sense of bringing it all together. We're trying to connect all the little dots that we've shared with you over the last 8.5 years. Another couple of months into this year, and we're in our 9th year, believe it or not. We're closing out our 8th year on the air. 407 shows, Dave. That's crazy saying. Ay vey. There's some lively conversation happening in the chat room. I love it. It's fantastic, and people are really getting into the topic we discussed earlier. Can we justify billionaires? No, we cannot justify billionaires, I believe. Millionaires, sure enough. Yes, okay, whatever. Billionaires, completely unacceptable. Now, we are talking about the hypothesis. And last week, we discussed with you the nature of our reality. How real is our reality, right? We discussed some evidence that the reality we inhabit at the moment is digital. Well, we talked about holographic states, SimCity equivalence, quantum weirdness, and now we're going to talk about objective reality. There's a paper published recently, and I mean recently. In fact, it was the article that we're looking at here was published November 14, 2019. I've sent the link into the chat room to the actual scientific paper, so you guys can have a look. It's really interesting, and I want to quickly read the abstract to you guys for a little bit of an intro. So the paper was published in Science Advances, and it was shown that in the micro world of atoms and particles that is governed by the strange rules of quantum mechanics, two different observers are entitled to their own facts. Two different observers are entitled to their own facts. In other words, according to our best theory of the building blocks of nature itself, facts, not opinions, can actually be subjective. So I want to give you the abstract. This is the abstract from the actual article. You can go to the scientific paper yourself. Like I said, it's in the chat room, but it's also part of the show notes. Now, this is the abstract. The scientific method relies on facts established through repeated measurements and agreed upon universally, independently of who observed them. All right, so far, I think we can all agree with that. In quantum mechanics, the objectivity of observations is not so clear. Most markedly exposed in Wegener's eponymous thought experiment, where two observers can experience seemingly different realities. The question whether the observers' narratives can be reconciled has only recently been made accessible to empirical investigation through recent no-go theorems that construct an extended Wegener's friend scenario with 4 observers. In a state-of-the-art 6-photon experiment, we realized the extended Wegener's friend scenario, experimentally violating the associated Bell-type inequality by 5 standard deviations. If one holds fast to the assumptions of locality and free choice, this result implies that quantum theory should be interpreted in an observer-dependent way. I want to say the last sentence again. If one holds fast to the assumptions of locality and free choice, this result implies that quantum theory should be interpreted in an observer-dependent way. What that means is the reality that you observe is dependent upon you. What? Yeah. So let's get into this a bit more in detail, Dave.
I can't do anything. My Skype chat locked up, and I can't do anything.
I will do it.
Thank you.
I will. So have you got the show notes or?
I don't have a recent version.
Oh no. This is okay. This is not the no. This should be page 38. Just have a look. See if you can find.
Yeah, sure.
Page 38. It's called Quantum Physics. Our study suggests objective reality doesn't exist. Just see if otherwise I'll try
understand.
to send it to you. Okay, Let's get into the article. Observers are powerful players in the quantum world. According to the theory, particles can be in several places or states at once. This is called a superposition. We've talked about this at length. It's the wave function, essentially. That's the wave function of the experiments. But oddly, this is only the case when they aren't observed. The second you observe a quantum system, it picks a specific location or state, breaking superposition. That's called quantum decoherence. Okay, that's called quantum decoherence. The fact that nature behaves this way has been proven multiple times in the lab. For example, in the infamous double-slit experiment. In 1961, physicist Eugen Wegener proposed a provocative thought experiment. He questioned what would happen when applying quantum mechanics to an observer that is themselves being observed. Imagine that a friend of Wegener tosses a quantum coin, which is in a superposition of both heads and tails, inside a closed laboratory. Every time the friend tosses the coin, they observe a definitive or definite outcome. Mm-hmm. We can say that Wegener's friend established a fact. The result of the coin toss is definitely a head or a tail. Wegener doesn't have access to this fact from the outside. And according to quantum mechanics must describe the friend and the coin to be in a superposition of all possible outcomes of the experiment. That's because they're entangled, or spookily connected, as Einstein put it, so that if you manipulate one, you also manipulate the other. Wigner can now in principle verify this superposition using a so-called interference experiment, a type of quantum measurement that allows you to unravel the superposition of an entire system, confirming that two objects are in fact entangled. When Wigner and the friend compare notes later on, the friend will insist they saw definite outcomes for each coin toss. Wigner, however, will disagree whenever he observed friend and coin in a superposition. This presents a conundrum. And again, this is a thought experiment here, okay? The reality perceived by the friend cannot be reconciled with the reality on the outside. Wigner originally didn't consider this much of a paradox. He argued it would be absurd to describe a conscious observer as a quantum object. However, he later departed from this view. And according to formal textbooks on quantum mechanics, the description is perfectly valid. Perfectly valid.
I've got the notes up.
The experiment.
Yes. The scenario has long remained an interesting thought experiment, but does it reflect reality? Scientifically, there has been little progress on this until very recently, when Kaslav Brunkner at the University of Vienna showed that under certain assumptions, Wigner's idea can be used to formally prove that measurements in quantum mechanics are subjective to observers. Bruckner proposed a way of testing this notion by translating the Wigner's friend scenario into a framework first established by the physicist John Bell in 1964. Bruckner considered two pairs of Wigners and friends in two separate boxes, conducting measurements on a shared state, inside and outside their respective box. The results can be summed up to ultimately be used to evaluate a so-called Bell inequality. If this inequality is violated, observers could have alternative facts. We have now for the first time performed this test experimentally at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh on a small-scale quantum computer made up of three pairs of entangled photons. The first photon pair represents the coins, and the other two are used to perform the coin toss. I'll fix it all up in post. Measuring the polarization of the photons inside their respective box, outside the two boxes the photons remain in each side that can also be measured. Despite using state-of-the-art quantum technology, it took weeks to collect sufficient data from just 6 photons to generate enough statistics. I'll put my teeth back in. That's an old gag. But eventually, we succeeded in showing that quantum mechanics might indeed be incompatible with the assumption of objective facts. We violated the inequality. The theory, however, is based on a few assumptions. These include that the measurement outcomes are not influenced by signals traveling above light speed, and that observers are free to choose what measurements to make. That may or may not be the case. Another important question is whether single photons can be considered to be observers. In Bruckner's theory proposal, observers do not need to be conscious. They must merely be able to establish facts in the form of a measurement outcome. An inanimate detector would therefore be a valid observer, for instance. And textbook quantum mechanics gives us no reason to believe that a detector, which can be made as small as a few atoms, should not be described as a quantum object just like a photon. It must also be possible that standard quantum mechanics does not apply at large length scales, but testing that is a separate problem. This experiment therefore shows that, at least for local models of quantum mechanics, we need to rethink our notion of objectivity. The facts we experience in our macroscopic world appear to remain safe, but a major question arises over how existing interpretations of quantum mechanics can accommodate subjective facts. Some physicists see these new developments as bolstering interpretations that allow more than one outcome to occur for an observation. For example, the existence of parallel universes in which each outcome happens. Others see it as compelling evidence for intrinsically observer-dependent theories such as quantum... Oh, what's that one?
Bayesianism.
Thank you. In which an agent's actions and experiences are central concerns of the theory, but yet others take this as a strong pointer that perhaps quantum mechanics will break down above certain complexity scales. Clearly, these are all deeply philosophical questions about the fundamental nature of reality. Whatever the answer, an interesting future awaits.
It truly is fascinating to consider this, to have two separately established pieces of fact, right? It flies in the face of common sense, or it's not intuitive. It's not what we're used to. I believe, though, that this is again a complete limitation of our biology in this particular form of existence. It's something, and science is pushing and pushing harder and harder, and the more science pushes, the more we get into the realms of philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, the thought constructs. So it's really funny. We are really
sort of believe
getting
they are polar opposites.
It
brings us full circle, right?
It does, because you can, like we said this before, we can't separate the physical from the, I don't want to call it spiritual, but the non-physical. Yeah, let's call it the non-physical. You can't separate it because you can't touch a mind, right? You can't measure a mind. I mean, you can measure its capacity, I guess, to some extent, but you can't take it and weigh it and chop it up, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the brain. I'm talking about the mind that inhabits, I guess, the brain, for want of a better word. It's the non-physical aspect to our existence, the non-physical aspect to our reality, which exists. It's there. I mean, at this point of our journey, you'd be somewhat limited if you didn't allow for the possibility that the non-physical exists. We have given you ample evidence, and one of the most compelling pieces of evidence, in my opinion, is reincarnation. For the non-physical.
Mickey, Schrodinger's cat has come up now so often in popular culture, brought back to life again, I suppose, if you mind the pun, in A Big Bang Theory, where science crossed over and made the geek or the science expert once again popular in popular culture. But there is something where this is Schrodinger's cat has also come into context.
Yes.
In the show notes.
Okay, it's a segue. Physicists prove quantum spookiness and start chasing Schrodinger's cat. It was a very nice segue there.
I did the best I could.
No, you did well. Now, this article was published October 24, 2015, when we first put these show notes together. So it was new then, 4 years ago. We have since added, obviously, the article we just shared with you, but this is still important, right? And this is also talking about Bell's inequality test. Very interesting. The world of quantum mechanics is weird. Objects that are far apart can influence each other in what Albert Einstein called spooky action at a distance. And cats can potentially be dead and alive at the same time. For decades, scientists have tried to prove that these effects are not just mathematical quirks, but real properties of the physical world. And they're getting somewhere. Researchers have finally proven in a new study that the link between particles at a distance reflects how the universe behaves. rather than being an experimental artifact. Meanwhile, another team of researchers have set out to show that a living creature, albeit a bacterium, tiny creature, but it's a bacterium, can be in two different quantum states at the same time.
What?
Just like the cat and Schrödinger's experiment. Now, this is big, guys. This is huge. A bacterium, not very big, compared to us. It is a multicellular. Sorry, not a multicellular organism. It's single cell. Mm-hmm. But the point is, it's a living thing. It's a living thing.
And it's in that macro.
Bell's it's firmly in the macro world. Yeah, Bell's inequality test. But let's begin with a paper published in Nature, the paper that was, which proves that the world is inherently spooky. All systems described by quantum mechanics can display so-called entanglement. For example, an electron, like a coin, can spin in two directions, up and down. But two electrons can be entangled so that a measurement of the spin of one electron will define the spin of the other. That's entanglement, in case we're wondering. According to quantum mechanics, the spin of one electron cannot be known in advance of a measurement, yet will be perfectly correlated with the other, even if it is in a distant location. And it doesn't matter how distant that location is. Einstein didn't like this, because it seemed to imply that the information can be sent from one electron to the other instantaneously, irrespective of distance, breaking a rule that says nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. He instead thought that there were hidden variables encoded in each electron that could determine the result if only we could access them. But in the 1960s, Northern Irish scientist John Bell came up with a method to test Einstein's theory. Bell's inequality, from the previous article, is satisfied only if actions in one location cannot affect another instantly, and the outcomes of measurements are well defined beforehand, something dubbed local realism. Bell showed, theoretically at least, that quantum entanglement would violate his inequality test, but local realist theories containing Einstein's hidden variables would not. This is because the link between entangled particles is stronger than Einstein wanted to believe. So, if the measured correlation between pairs of particles from an experiment was above a certain threshold, it would be incompatible with hidden variables, and entanglement would win the day. Dave?
Yes. Bell's theorem. The desire to test this in the lab has driven huge experimental advances in the 51 years since Bell's paper. However, all implementations of Bell test to date have contained loopholes that have left some wiggle room for the universe to obey local realist theories. One of these was that the efficiency of the measurements was too low, known as the detection loophole. Although the data obtained violated Bell's inequality test, it may not be a representative sample of a complete set due because some photons in the experiment couldn't be detected. Another loophole was that the measurements were too slow. The locality loophole. If the measurement devices were able to communicate via some unknown, slower than light channel, they could share information and influence the outcome of the impending measurement. The new study is the first experiment to simultaneously close both of these loopholes. In a test of Bell's inequality, the scientists used a laser to make two specific electrons, each within a diamond located over a kilometer apart, to increase their energy and emit a particle of light, a photon, which was entangled with the state of the electron. These photons were then sent through an optical fiber to be united at a third location. If they arrived at just the same time, the photons would interact with each other and become entangled, meaning their remote electron buddies would become entangled too. The electrons' spin were then measured to test Bell's inequality. The two loopholes were closed by ensuring the efficiency and speed of the readout were sufficiently high. As a result, the team were able to demonstrate conclusively that the universe does not obey local realism. The outcomes of measurements cannot be known in advance, and half of an entangled state can exert spooky action on its remote partner. Meki.
Crazy. So we know for a fact now that entanglement and the spooky action at a distance are a reality. Physics' most famous feline. You love alliterations. Entanglement is not the only type of unusual quantum behavior. Another effect, known as superposition, is the ability of a particle to exist in two states, for example, spin or even location, simultaneously, and is now regularly observed in laboratories around the world. For example, electrons have been known to travel through two slits at the same time when we're not watching. The minute we observe each slit to catch this behavior in action, the particle chooses just one. And see, sorry, I'm going to just put a break on here. We anthropomorphizing, meaning we're putting human-like traits on particles. Is that something we should do? Well, we don't have language to describe it in any other way, because the particle behaves differently depending on whether you observe it or not. So in our mind, in our limited human minds, that would indicate choice, right? But I think the proper term should be compulsion. The particle is compelled to act in a singular fashion rather than going through both slits at once. And superposition is not just two states. Superposition is every possible state. Okay, it's a wave function. So superposition is every possible point on that wavefront. Okay, and the particle only decoheres, collapses into the one state if it is observed, and it doesn't choose to do so. In my opinion, I think it is compelled to do so. Okay, it is compelled to do so.
Around. It's
certainly
observable state.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. It seems that we can only observe it in the state that we would expect it to be in, meaning just the one state, not multiple states, if you get my drift. We could not comprehend the reality of seeing the particle, I guess, split, not just split, but, an infinite number of splits and going through the slits in every which way.
Well, think about what the four out options are. It went through the left one, the right one, both, or none.
Yeah, and at the same time, not only just did it go through, but it also it interfered with itself, right? Which means it must have gone in every possible trajectory that you can imagine, right, through those slits. So you're right, Dave. And that's something that simply wouldn't stand in our very neat Newtonian universe, right? So, quantum superposition made easy, sure. Sure it is. If you understand it, you lie. However, and this is going back to the article, we do not directly observe these effects in daily life. That's true. For example, my glass, cannot be in two places at once, or it'd be a struggle to drink. Maybe not a bad thing for some people, but because we don't encounter such bizarre things, it would seem logical that at some scale things switch over from the weird world of quantum to our familiar everyday. And just on that as an aside, then I'll get back to the article. And now the advent of the quantum computer and the ability to I guess create them successfully will show us exactly where that border lies, if there is in fact a border, because the quantum effect of the entangled particles, the qubits, right, will show itself up until a certain scale, in my opinion. We've reached a certain scale, a certain size, let's call it, of a quantum computer. Like once we've a certain number of qubits, it'll cross over into the macro world, and the quantum effects will cease. Or at least in my mind, that's how it should work. If there's any logic to the quantum systems at all. Or maybe, Dave, we'll find out there's in fact no line.
Well, imagine if you had a grand piano on a catapult or a sled, a rocket sled,
and
no one watched it. but it was to go through double slit.
Yeah.
So when
I
the
don't know.
rocket sled stops and it
Yeah.
continues its travel and no one watches it, does it smash on the wall behind it? Does it turn into an interference pattern? Does it go through the left slot or the right slot? Both or none? We
Does
won't
it turn
know.
into a whale?
It
Does it turn into a whale?
Yeah, so I'm
Or
hoping it'll be
flower
my
pot.
friend.
It'll be your friend. I call it flower pot.
Yes.
So, but this the article actually goes on to shed some light on these questions, and this is really the question, Dave. I mean, maybe we are living in a world that is completely governed by the quantum weirdness. We've just chosen to. I mean, think of all the strange things that have happened to you, to other people, and no one likes to talk about it, right? And some of the things just don't make any sense. Just what? No, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense at all. And if we lived in a quantum governed world, then we wouldn't be as surprised because anything could happen. Yeah, it's just I mean, I guess our expectations are what govern our reality. Now, in the article, though, and this is interesting because it is obviously a core to the question we just asked, what is the scale at which the switch happens? This switch from the quantum to our familiar everyday macro world, right? What is the scale? If we had a technically perfect experiment, would we be able to observe large objects in these superposition states, as David suggested, a sled, right? Would we be able to? This is the question posed by Schrödinger's thought experiment. You know, everybody knows Schrödinger's cat. And in that experiment, a cat is placed in a sealed box with a flask of poison and a single radioactive atom, which will undergo decay at a random time. If the atom decays, the flask is broken and the cat is poisoned. If it does not, the cat lives on. But waiting for the atom to decay, does the cat exist in both states at once, as the atom does? We know that when we open the box, we must find the cat alive or dead. But is it a property of the universe or the observer that makes the cat choose its state? Back to the team preparing to address this very question. Their proposal involves putting a bacterium rather than a cat in a state of superposition. Recent technical advances based on superconducting microwave resonators, that's a mouthful, superconducting microwave resonators, you can look it up in your own time, devices used to detect radiation and for quantum computation, have enabled physicists to observe quantum effects in tiny, flexible aluminum or aluminum membranes, known as micromechanical oscillators, coupled to the circuits. Tiny membranes count as large objects in the world of quantum physics because even with a mass of only 50 picograms, which is 50 trillionth of a gram, so it's very, very tiny, very, very light, they contain hundreds of billions of atoms. However, these resonators have to be cooled to within a fraction of absolute zero, which is about minus 273 degrees Celsius, at which point nothing moves.
That's
right?
0 Kelvin.
0 Kelvin, correct. Before any quantum behavior emerges. So you have to cool it to absolute zero before any quantum behavior emerges. Otherwise, thermal vibrations mask the effects. Makes sense. The team plans to put a bacterium on top of such a membrane, which would then be cooled to its lowest state of energy. The membrane would then be placed into a superposition of two different states of motion, two different types of oscillations. They aim to show that the effect of the bacterium of the properties of the oscillator would be minimal, with the oscillator effectively behaving as if the bacterium were not there. In this way, the bacterium would effectively be in two states of motion at once. The researchers also plan to entangle the position of the bacterium with the spin of an electron inside it. The proposed experiment would be impressive, but mainly for showing that quantum mechanics holds true for objects bigger than subatomic particles. But it seems unlikely to answer whether Schrödinger's cat can be alive and dead at the same time, because the bacterium would remain in a constant glass-like state of cryopreservation, frozen. If this where the cat, it would exist in suspended animation rather than in a superposition of simultaneous life and death. Now, this is the kicker here, though, right? I have not been able to find this experiment.
Oh.
Yeah. How about that, huh? So if anybody out there in the world knows how this experiment went, I would love to understand what happened, because all we have is the proposal for the experiment. Yeah.
Everyone in the room disappeared into another universe.
Yeah, maybe. It was in 2015, and the scientists were Tong Kang Lee and Zhang Qi Yin. Okay, that's who they were, and they were. Oh, what university is this? Cornell. That's where they were.
All right, so they're now working for a military contract, having created a portal to another universe.
Yeah, because I've only got the post setup. There's nothing of. See, it was last updated in January 2016, and there's no information here as to whether or not this was actually conducted, this experiment. Right? I'd love to understand. If anybody out there knows, let me know. But it was last updated 3 years ago, and radio silence since. So let me know. Okay, if anybody out there has got the answer, please let me know.
They've gone back in time and with using red mercury, and how they're working for the Nazis.
What?
Just saying, anything's possible in this crazy, topsy-turvy, non-causality world. Oh, there's a segue. You know what? Causality disappears at the flick of a switch. Researchers demonstrate superpositions using a device comprising of a single atom. Andrew Masterton reports. Scientists have succeeded in observing one of the strangest predictions of quantum theory, the breakdown of causality. In the macro world, causality is a fundamental property. If one thing happens, it causes another to follow it. For instance, if a tap is turned on, water flows out. Or if a drum is struck, a sound is heard. If this, as the saying goes, then that. All right, so we're across it. On a quantum level, however, cause and effect breaks down. The weirdness of quantum mechanics means that events can happen without a set order, says physicist Jackie Romero.
Oh, that's sexy.
My accents are terrible. It's Jackie Romero from the University of Queensland. Oh, it'd be Jackie. It'd be Jacka. Anyway, University of Queensland in Australia. To prove this, Romero and colleagues constructed a tiny machine known as a photonic quantum switch. Essentially, a gate mechanism built from a single atom that can be turned on and off by using a single photon. Such switches were first designed in 2014 by scientists at Harvard University in the US and are seen as critical components for future secure quantum computers. Essentially, by altering the state of a single atom, a flow of photons can either be opened up or closed. Romero's team used a quantum photonic switch to demonstrate that two possible operations, dubbed A and B, can exist in superposition of their two possible orders. By changing the polarization of the photons, the scientists were able to demonstrate that one did not need to precede the other. So to turn it off, you didn't need to be on. Does it make sense? In essence, the two operations could happen in any sequence, a condition known as indefinite causal order. Take the example of your daily trip to work. When you travel partly by bus and partly by train, explains Romero, normally you would take the bus, then the train, or the other way round. In our experiment, both of these events can happen first, even though there's no train station near you, where you are. You take the second half of the trip, then you take the first half of the trip, and you're at work. That's really funny. The scientists showed that the order of events occurring when the switch depended on entirely on polarization, not causality. By measuring the polarization of the photons at the output of the quantum switch, we were able to show the order of transformations on the shape of light was not set, says co-author Fabio Costa. This is just a first proof of principle, but on a larger scale, indefinite causal order can have real practical applications, like making computers more efficient or improving communications. Making the top hat double slit experiment proved that the item didn't go down the path, or did go down the path, compared to its entangled twin before it or after it. It meant that you could affect something before you touched it. There's causality out the window there on that experiment. I like this, the way that they've approached it, but I mean, what's next?
Well, causality. Okay, so we seem to have established. Well, no, sorry, that's not true. We seem to have indications that time is an illusion. We seem to have indications that space is an illusion. We now also have indications that causality. So causality, of course, being I knock over a glass bottle onto a concrete floor, the glass bottle breaks, is in question as well.
What's really going to make you noodle is if, would you have broken it, I didn't say anything.
That's just yeah, exactly right. Like, gotta love the Matrix movies. And the thing is this: these are the fundamental building blocks of our reality: time, space, causality. Right? Without them, our reality completely collapses. We no longer have anything to hold on to, and we don't know what to say or what to do. Our belief systems, and they are belief systems, believe it or not, our theories completely break down. And there's nothing left for us to hold on to or make sense of the world. If those go out the window, if time, space, causality go out the window, right? What are we left with, Dave? We're left with a completely ontological gap. It's ontology being the science of being, right? So we no longer have any ontological substances to stand on. And we may very well be completely lost, because in our present physical form, we can no longer deal with this, right? We can't deal with that kind of reality. We just couldn't.
I'm
it wouldn't be possible.
And you're me.
We go insane. Yeah. No, we would. Well, yeah. I mean, but even that would break down. Because there's no space, Dave. There's no time. The barriers between you and myself and others would completely collapse. There would be no separation of anyone from anyone.
True. That's true.
Right? And that's crazy if you think about it. So this is much worse than living in a hologram or simulation. Yeah, or at least you've got like a virtual separation. You know, if truly there's no time and space, right, and the causality is out the window, then you know it will all collapse in on itself.
It still makes me believe that it's still digital, because I think we're working within the realm now of avoiding say it was digital and it's a computer running this entire simulation. If we're running within the bounds of the code, it works. When we're testing the edge of the code, it fails. Does that make sense? So I think we're able to show by many examples how this, it just keeps coming back to being a digitized universe. That you know, things are only rendered when we need to see them. They're only rendered because we need to see that it's there, right? Yeah. Causality, if we're working on such a finite, small measurement, maybe that's not inside the computer's ability to render it. Does it make sense?
Yes.
And so that's what as we get to the edge, that's what it appears to be. I know it sounds ridiculous to the audience, but I think Mackie and I were on the same page here.
Well, that's the thing. That's where it becomes all deeply philosophical. It all becomes very. See, this is where we then really have to have some strong, I don't know, ideas, some strong identities to fall back on. I guess you have how can I put this best? It doesn't help you to become a tourist on someone else's experience. You have to build yourself up from scratch. right? Because the only thing ultimately you can rely on are the experiences you're having. Those are things that are real to you, at least in your present form. You have your experiences, right? That's who you are. Everything else, like inherited opinions, tourist trips on other people's lives, they're all completely non-helpful.
I really think I enjoy other people's opinions. My inherited.
Oh no, but
what?
That's okay.
I'm trying to make a joke out of it.
All right, fair enough.
They say that I'm supposed to enjoy inherited opinion.
But look, I think we've thrown enough mud at our reality here. And the key thing here is it's still a reality we're in. It's still something we're stuck in. There's nothing we can do at the moment. But there is an escape, and that's the next part of the program. We'd like to focus on the escape from this reality. What you say? An escape? Yes, it's sort of your emergency exit, I think. Your last escape hatch, if you will. Maybe a backdoor in coding terms, Dave.
The exits are painted on.
The exits are painted on. Oh, did you use magic paint? Sure. And it has become clear to us, I think, over the last, certainly last 8 years, but potentially longer, that the pineal gland holds some of the answers we're seeking. It's odd. It's strange. And I think we'll get this in, right? But the 10 questions about the pineal gland, and then next week we'll go into a bit more deeper. There are 10 questions about the pineal gland that will allow us to set the right tone for our discussion. Dave?
Indeed. Number 1, is the pineal gland the evolutionary remnant of a literal third mammalian eye that moved into the center of the brain and changed functions from gathering light to entraining rhythms in accordance with information gathered by the retina?
2, why do the visionary states of consciousness induced by psychedelics and meditative practices seem to be centered around the very part of the brain where the pineal gland sits?
Number 3, if there is no connection between spirituality and the pineal gland, how is it that the 6th chakra, which chakra, Mackie?
I think it's the Aina chakra.
Aina chakra, according to ancient Hindu tradition, is located precisely where the pineal gland sits and has for centuries been associated with the mind's eye, the eye of intellect and intuition.
And then 4thly, is there a connection between the spiritual promise of the pineal gland, which is shaped like a pine cone, and the pigna, or piña, the colossal bronze pine cone statue of ancient Rome, which now sits in the courtyard in the Vatican and is flanked by 2 peacocks?
Number 5, does the pineal gland produce the body's natural supply of DMT? That's the dimethyltryptamine, a chemical compound that produces incredible visionary effects when consumed in concentrated form or in the Amazonian medicine acacia.
Ayahuasca.
Oh, ayahuasca. I'm sorry. Ayahuasca.
Yeah, all good.
I've heard
6.
some other people talk about that.
Yeah, no, this is powerful stuff. That's what. What's his name? He was a reporter, and he's now writing a whole bunch of really interesting. Graham Hancock.
Yes.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. That ayahuasca. I'm actually scared to take any of that stuff. I am scared. I'll be honest with you. 6. Does the pineal gland release massive doses of DMT when a person dies, or when a person nearly dies, which causes the mind to have near-death experiences, or causes the soul to return to source?
Well, that's interesting. It might be a call. That's really, really interesting. Number 7, what is the significance of the fact that the ancient Egyptian symbol, the Eye of Horus, strongly resembles the anatomy of the middle section of the brain, the upper cortex, centering on the thalamus and the pineal gland?
Now, the Eye of Horus is... Yeah, it is a dead ring. You know, the Eye of Horus. If you don't know, guys, it's an eye. Obviously, it's a hieroglyph of an eye, but that's the eye that has like a sort of like a hook, like a curled hook, and a straight line down, as well as the eyebrow on top of it. That's the Eye of Horus, and it truly looks like a cross section, yeah, of the upper cortex around the thalamus and the pineal gland. It really does. Uncannily so, in my opinion. 8. Why is the pineal gland the only organ in the human body that calcifies and solidifies with age? The only one. Anybody?
Anyone? Bueller?
Bueller.
Number 9. If the pineal gland has little effect on consciousness, why is it that people suffering from Alzheimer's disease and dementia diseases, which cause them to be severely psychologically disconnected from the real world, have pineal glands that are much more calcified than those of ordinary people?
And then the final question we would like to ask you is, why is it that following the methods of pineal gland decalcification, which we will share with you, and cleansing often bring genuine results to people who are seeking heightened spiritual experiences? And why do these practices often result in people being able to more easily remember dreams and lead them to feel more connected to Source?
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are the questions that we would like you to think and ponder about. We don't have enough time to go into the background on the pineal gland. We'll go into the scientific background. So we'll share with you what the pineal gland is, where it sits, what we think or what scientists believe its function is, and then we'll go into the prevalence of the pine cone shape as well. Fascinating stuff, by the way. Some of the images are quite astounding, and you see it everywhere. That's the thing. It's everywhere. Okay, and this is the funny thing. This is all in plain sight, Dave. It's hidden in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing really hidden here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hidden. It's hidden in plain sight. We walk past it all the time. Why, Mackie? Well, one of the questions that I have. Why? Okay, I've got 2 questions. Why would the Anunnaki hold pine cones up to people? That's bizarre. Why would a government, for instance, not want its people to be connected with each other?
Mm-hmm.
That goes deeper into a conspiracy. To get there, you've got to go through a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the calcification of your pineal gland.
Yeah.
And
the fluoridation of the water. That's going to be covered.
There's a connection right there.
Hey,
Hey.
that's what happens.
That's
And the pine cone shape is the pine cone shape in Western culture, right? And now, if you think about it, the pine cone shape itself, you look at Angkor Wat, you look at the shape of the lotus flower
in India.
Yeah, these are all very similar shapes, and they all correspond to the pine cone shaped gland that sits in the middle of your brain. By the way, there's no duplicate gland. There's only one pineal gland. All right, so it doesn't follow your body symmetry at all. It's a singular organ.
Singular centralized organ.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. It is quite extraordinary that a dual hemisphere, dual organ brain would have a single connection. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And we're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff about the pineal gland. We're going to learn about the brain-blood barrier. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So, and then, of course, what does it all mean? And we look at the pineal gland in history, what people have thought about it, some chemicals like serotonin, melatonin, and DMT, what they mean. And then we will also tell you how to activate it if you want to do that. All right, there's a little, there's some exercises and certain things you can do to activate your pineal gland. There's breathing. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, look, absolutely. And then, of course, there's a final thought, and then we go into quantum, and then we bring it all together, and then we have all kinds of epiphanies, and at the end we will tell you the epiphany, why we're here, at least up to this point, what it all means. And that brings us to the end of the hypothesis cycle, which now at 69 pages will soon be a book. I promise you. I'm just getting the shows transcribed. It'll be then hopefully a book purchasable. Well, I might even get a publisher. It's all possible. We'll see. We'll see. But there's a lot to come, and it's really important to understand that we don't claim to have all the answers, right? And we could be wrong about everything. Absolutely. It's doubtful though that we're wrong about everything, because there's a lot of corroborating evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, in our assertions. So all the quantum scientific stuff, all the science as we presented to you is accepted science, peer reviewed, and beyond reproach. I mean, there could be mistakes there as well, of course. There's certain assumptions around it, but it is not something that we made up. These things we've shared with you that are a bit more, I guess, ethereal or spiritual in nature, like reincarnation. You know, the science around that, and the method that people follow to collect the data is also quite astounding and very thorough, right? So we've tried to be as thorough and objective as we can be as well, right? That's really the important thing to understand. We don't claim to know everything, and we certainly didn't come up with all of this ourselves. We're just putting it together for you. And this is really the key thing to understand. We bring you the data and some information, and you do with it as you wish. How you choose to live your life, of course, is entirely up to you, Dave.
Completely. Look, we're right close to the top of the hour. I'd just like to thank everyone for tuning in, and thank you for allowing us to be in your lives. Coming up next is a great show with Jer. Always tune in and be a part of that. He plays some great music, and jump in and call in and be part of it. Also, next week will this be show 408. We'll let you know what's going to happen. I think the music's going to start any second, so don't forget to donate. This has been another Shiny Side Out production. And to Grog, yeah, absolutely. I used to go down to Huntington Pier. I used to ride my bike down through the canals, as you probably already know. Anyway,
Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being with us. Take care.